wanted when it occurred to me that it was probably not at my door that the steps had stopped, but at the door directly opposite, across the corridor. Without doubt, my opposite neighbor had merely returned to his room, and his footsteps had ceased to reach my ears when he entered and closed his door behind him. I dozed off, but half an hour later, as nearly as I can estimate it, I awoke and was thinking of the necessity for getting undressed and into bed when a very slight rustling noise attracted my attention. I listened intently to locate the direction or the sound and determine whether it was inside the room or out of it, and then heard in connection with it a slighter and more regular sound which could be nothing else than breathing. Some living creature, Miss Waldron, was in my room. The sounds came from the direction of the table by the window. I turned my head as silently as I was able, and was aware that a man was holding a sheet of paper under the light of the lamp. He was at the table going through the papers in my writing desk, but the very slight noise I had made in turning on the bed had warned him. He rose with a hissing intake of the breath. His feet pattered softly and swiftly across the floor. My door creaked under his hand, and he was gone before I could jump up from the bed and intercept him. I ran out into the hallway, but it was empty. I listened, but could hear no movement in any of the rooms near me. I went back and examined the writing desk, but found nothing missing, and it was plain nothing had been touched except some of my letters from you. But before finally going to bed, you may well believe I locked my door carefully, and in the morning I reported the matter to the hotel office. The only description I could give of the intruder was that he had certainly worn a turban, and one even larger, it seemed to me, than ordinary. The hotel attendants had seen no one coming from or entering my corridor that night who answered this description. The turban and the absence of European shoes, of course, determined him to have been an Egyptian, Turk, or Arab. But what Egyptian, Turk, or Arab could have entered my room with any other object than robbery, which was certainly not the aim of my intruder, for the valuables in the writing desk were untouched. That same afternoon, it is true, I had had an altercation amounting almost to a quarrel with a Bedouin Arab on my way back from Heliopolis. But if this were he, why should he have taken revenge on my writing desk instead of on me? And what reason on earth can any follower of the Prophet have had for examining with such particular attention my letters from you? It was so decidedly a strange thing that I have taken all this space to tell it to you. One of the strangest sort of things I have had in all my knocking about, and Lawler can make no more of it than I. Who is this Lawler? Who was with Mr. Axton, then? Trot looked up interestedly from the last page of the letter. I only know he was a friend Howard made in London, an interesting man who had traveled a great deal, particularly in America. Howard was lonely after his mother's death, and as Mr. Lawler was about his age, they struck up a friendship and traveled together. An English younger son, perhaps. I don't know anything else except that he had been in the English army, in the Royal Sussex Regiment, but was forced to give up his commission on account of charges that he had cheated at cards. Howard always held that the charges were false, but that was why he wanted to travel. You know of no other trouble which this Lawler had? No, none. Then where is he now? Dead. Dead? Tron's face fell. Yes, he was the friend I spoke of that was lost, drowned in the wreck of the Gladstone just before Howard started home. Trot picked up the next letter, which was dated and postmarked at Calcutta. Miss Waldron, I have seen him again, he read. Who, you ask? My Muslim friend with a taste for your correspondence. You see, I can again joke about it, but really it was only last night, and I am still in a perfect funk. It was the same man, I swear it, shoeless and turbaned, and enjoying the pleasant pursuit of going through my writing desk for your letters. Did he follow us down the Red Sea, across the Indian Ocean? Over 3,000 miles of ocean travel? I can imagine no other explanation, for I would take oath to his identity. The very same man I saw at Cairo, but now here in this great Eastern hotel at Calcutta, where we have 2 rooms at the end of the most noisome corridor that ever caged the sounds and odors of a babbling East Indian population, and where the doors have no locks. I had the end of a trunk against my door, notwithstanding the fact that an Indian servant I have hired was sleeping in the corridor outside across the doorway. But it booted nothing, for Lawler in the next room had neglected to fasten his door in any way, trusting to his servant, who occupied like a strategic position outside the threshold, and the door between our two rooms was open. I had been asleep in spite of everything, in spite of the snores and stertorous breathing of a floorful of sleeping humans, for the partitions between the rooms do not come within several feet of the ceiling, in spite of the distant bellowing of a sacred bull, and the nearer howl of a very far from sacred dog, and a jingling of elephant bells which were set off intermittently somewhere close at hand whenever some living thing in their neighborhood, animal or human, shifted its position. I was awakened, at least I believe it was this which awakened me, by a cracking of the floorboards in my room, and with what seemed a causeless but was certainly one of the most oppressive feelings of chilling terror I have ever experienced, I started upright in my bed. He was there, again at my writing desk, and rustling the papers. For an instant I remained motionless, and in that instant, alarmed by the sound I had made, he fled noiselessly, pattered through the door between the rooms, and loudly slammed it shut, slammed Lawler's outer door behind him, and had gone. I crashed the door open, ran across the creaking floor to the other room, where Lawler, awakened by the slamming of the doors, had whisked out of bed and opened the door into the corridor. Lawler's servant, aroused but still dazed with sleep, blubbered that he had seen no one, though the man must have stepped over his very body. A dozen other servants, sleeping before their masters' doors in the corridor, had awakened likewise, but cried out shrilly that they had seen no one. Lawler, too, though the noise of the man's passage had brought him out of bed, had not seen him. When I examined my writing desk, I found, as before at Cairo, that nothing had been taken. The literary delight of looking over your letters seems to be all that draws him. Of course I am joking, for there must be a real reason. What it is that he is searching for, why it is that he follows me. For he has never intruded on anyone else, so far as I can learn. I would like to know. The native servants asked in awestruck whispers whether I noticed if his feet were turned backwards, for it seems they believe that to be one of the characteristics of a ghost. But the man was flesh and blood. I am sure of it, and I am bound that if he comes again I will learn his object, for I sleep now with my pistol under my pillow, and next time I shall shoot. Trot, as he finished the last words, looked up suddenly at Miss Waldron, as though about to ask a question, or make some comment, but checked himself, and hastily laying aside this letter, he picked up the next one, which bore a Cape Town dateline. My affair with my mysterious visitor came almost to a conclusion last night, for except for a careless mistake of my own, I should have bagged him. Isn't it mystifying, bewildering? Yes, and a little terrifying. He made his appearance here last night in Cape Town, thousands of miles away from the two other places I had encountered him, and he seemed to have no more difficulty in entering the house of a Cape Town correspondent, Mr. Arthur Emsley, where we are guests, than he had before in entering public hotels, and when discovered he disappeared as mysteriously as ever. This time, however, he took some precautions. He had moved my night lamp so that with his body in shadow he could still see the contents of my desk, but I could hear his shoulders rubbing on the wall and located him exactly. I slipped my hand noiselessly from my revolver, but it was gone. The slight noise I made in searching for it alarmed him, and he ran. I rushed out into the hall after him. Mr. Emsley and Lawler, awakened by the breaking of the glass, had come out of their rooms. They had not seen him, and though we searched the house, he had disappeared as inexplicably as the two other times. But I have learned one thing. It is not a turban he wears. It is his coat, which he takes off and wraps around his head to hide his face, an odd disguise, and the possession of a coat of that sort makes it probable he is a European. I know of only 2 Europeans who have been in Cairo, Calcutta, and Cape Town at the same time we were, both travelers like ourselves. A guttural young German named Schultz, a freight agent for the Norddeutscher Lloyd, and a nasal American named Walcott, who travels for the Sarek Medicine Company of New York. I shall keep an eye on both of them, for in my mind at least, this affair has come to be a personal and bitter contest between the unknown and myself. I am determined not only to know who this man is and what is the object of his visits,